that in the mixer right now.
I've been coming to Braille for 2 years, and in Mindy's class, where I'm learning how to use cooking tools without hurting myself. I'm doing the grating, and I've learned how to use the knives correctly. I'm really enjoying it and meeting the other students and seeing all the different ways of making good food. Really good.
Today we worked with some knife skills with Marjorie, and we were chopping some nuts. So why don't you show them the technique I showed you? She holds the knife in one hand and the top of the knife with the other hand, so we know that there will be no fingers underneath the blade. And she rocks the knife, and she's able to feel safe, and she's using chef's knife, which a lot of people are afraid of using, but we teach them the proper techniques and safety tips. And we teach them that accidents happen from dull knives, not sharp knives. Dull knives bounce off the food.
And as you can see, I can also gather my nuts as they spread out, put them back together, and keep rocking the knife.
Here we are at the music class that David Simpson is teaching. This is one of several groups that we have. This is the Luminaries, which is an all-women's choir.
2, 3, 4. Okay, 3 and. Okay, the next part. Here are the lyrics, and here is the best part.
And here's the best part.
You have a head start.
You have a head start.
If you are among the very young at heart. And here is the best part. You have a head start. If you are among the very young at heart.
What a wonderful piece, and of course a nice inspirational song. Which reminds me, Dan, you love music.
Yes. Yeah.
And one of the reasons for moving downtown was so that you could be close to the symphony.
Right, and the opera. Yeah.
Yes. Well, your opera's a bit much for me.
We could win you over.
I see. Carmen, it is so important to mention this because I know members of our audience are thinking, well, the Braille Institute, what have they got for me? In fact, there are many free services there for people.
Yes, and let me just mention a few. First of all, we want everyone to know we have free services. Count them, free, F-R-E-E,
Yeah,
for everybody.
I didn't
A lot of times, I was telling you, Paul, that people think it costs a lot of money. No, it doesn't. So we want you to know that. We have classes, over 150 classes throughout the year in different things like art or Braille reading and writing, cooking. We have a Dodger class that Wes Parker teaches. He was a Dodger.
Cool. Yes, he was.
Every year takes like 30 people to the game and sits next to each of them and tells them what that player's thinking out there.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
We have salsa dancing, yoga, I mean, whatever you can think of. Every class, there's no such thing as a frivolous class because it could be that cooking class that makes that person think, gee, I can still do all the things I did before.
Right.
You know? And we also have free Braille services. We produce millions of pages in Braille every year. And our library for the blind and physically handicapped, which offers over 90,000 titles of talking books.
Fantastic. Yeah. Carmen, it's time to take a short break. So when we return, we will continue our visit to the Braille Institute. Please stay tuned. We'll be back in just a minute.
You know, honey, I've been thinking. You're not prepared for an earthquake. Take this antique vase your mom got you. If the big one hit, be a goner. Or this clay penguin you made in 3rd grade. History. By simply strapping loose furniture to the wall and putting putty under loose items, you can prevent serious injury and damage. Nothing is safe. Even poor Uncle Petey. Get the message? Be prepared.
The Department of Public Works Bureau of Contract Administration keeps the city's projects on track, ensuring safety first and fairness always, from the streets all the way to the stars.
Welcome back to Aging in LA. I'm Paul Peterson, and today we are finding out all about the Braille Institute. Our guests are Carmen Appelgren, Community Relations Coordinator at the Braille Institute, and Dan Donlan, former professor at UC Riverside, who became a student at the Institute when macular degeneration impaired his vision. Thank you both again for joining us. This is utterly fascinating. Now, how many students, how many people are on campus at the Braille Institute on any given day?
Any given day, it's about 150 to 200 students will be on our campus, yes.
Wow.
And we have, I just wanted to mention, we have centers all over Southern California. Our mothership is in Los Angeles.
It is the mothership.
Since 1919. We are old. And then Rancho Mirage, Santa Barbara, San Diego, and in Orange County and Anaheim. So we cover, with our direct services, all of Southern California. And we have outreach programs, so we go to senior centers, because transportation, Paul, is a big deal for people who are vision impaired.
Southern California, amen.
And it's because it's not a, it's a car place, you know.
Yeah.
So we take our show on the road to go to them also, because not everybody can get in.
Do you remember Alan Sherman's great description of Los Angeles? It was 28 shopping centers looking for a city.
Exactly. Yeah. And now it's probably
But that's
100
good that you're mobile, and
Yes.
and of course I assume that there are transportation services available for people to come to the campus.
Oh, definitely. We have routes. We have 13 different routes. This is at our LA center. So we have a fleet of, we come in from San Pedro, actually. We have a pickup here. Torrance, as far as Santa Clarita, and we have a bus that comes in from Pomona since 1964.
Well, now, and Dan, tell me a little bit about this. You were a piano player, and now you're getting instruction and help, so you can do jazz?
Jazz, yeah, right.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
I've been in the program 4 years, and as I said, I would hate to pay privately for the quality of musical instruction I've had. And he started with individual lessons. Then he said, "Would you like to play in a jazz group?" And then we started the Monday afternoon jazz group. Now we've got a Latin jazz class.
Fantastic.
It's been unbelievable.
Now, you mentioned a name. You're a teacher, because we have some of the best studio musicians in the world out here.
Our teacher is David Simpson.
David
Simpson and Faye Roberts are our two music teachers, and they're both professionals. I mean, you know, they do gigs on the weekend.
Yeah.
they're 100-carat diamonds.
No.
Yes, they are.
That's so fantastic. Now, we have people who are watching right now who are caregivers, and perhaps a loved one is beginning to suffer the effects of deteriorating vision. I want to make sure people know how to get in touch with you, Carmen.
Well, they can just call us at 1-800-BRAILLE.
Now, that's pretty darn simple.
Yeah, 1-800-BRAILLE. Or we have a website, brailleinstitute.org.
Right.
And we will be glad to talk to anybody. And if someone does have a caregiver and that caregiver needs to be with that student, they can come with them to Braille Institute. You know, they can accompany them. We have several people that have
Now,
caregivers.
what are the youngest ages that are there? I mean, I know we focus on senior issues, but...
Well, let me tell you, we start with age 0 to over 100.
Wow.
Couple little factoids for you. We do child development with the 0 to before they go to kindergarten. This is a wonderful program. We have about 200 kids in it right now. So this is where, say someone like Children's Hospital has some parents that have a blind child. They give us, you know, we have a partnership with them. They will say, here, you can call the Braille Institute. We have a counselor that will go into that home, work with the parents and with the baby and the siblings till that child's ready to go to preschool. They go to a regular preschool, because sighted kids, you know, they have no problems with anybody with disabilities, right? They're just kids.
Well,
like
of course,
everyone else.
they don't even notice it. In
They
fact,
don't even notice it.
Look, earlier in the program, we dropped in on cooking and vocal music classes. So we have some tape. Let's see what's in store as we continue our tour of classes offered by the Braille Institute.
This is our computer room, and Francis Daniels is the teacher of adaptive technology. And Francis has taught here for many, many years. He loves it, and the students love him.
This is a facility where we teach blind people how to use Access technology. We have large print, which is zoom text for Windows, and that shows information in different sizes of large print. We also are using JAWS, which stands for Job Access with Speech, and that's a Windows screen reader. This class is currently working on a project where they're typing documents, learning Microsoft Word, and various applications so that they can use it in their own personal life.
We're here in front of the Creative Arts Room that we're going to visit, where Rhonda Velasic is the teacher, and they teach everything from ceramics to printmaking to sculpture. The sky's the limit.
This class we have tile pictures, and we use some adaptive techniques so the students can work on their own. Here we've put down a raised glue line so the students can feel the space that they're going to fill in. A lot of the students bring pictures or ask for pictures, and we draw them out for them, or they'll bring a picture from home. But this makes them independent, so they're able to work on their own with some small little adaptive techniques. Mary's working on a picture of one of her guide dogs, and she loves to do tile pictures, and she always brings me difficult things, black on black, but she brings me pictures of the dog, and I tell her where to fill in, and she cuts all the tiles. Emery's cutting all his tiles into tiny little pieces. Helen's working with a volunteer, and she's working on some ceramic pieces. What are you making, Helen?
I'm making what would you call it? Like a hanging basket to put plant, like
a wall.
In.
Oh, a wall. A wall.
Dried flowers, dried weeds.
Yeah.
This is a sculpture by Seward that was donated by Helen Lyndhurst, and it is a sculpture of our founder, Bob Atkinson, who was a real cowboy who was blinded in 1912, and he became the founder of Braille Institute in 1919. The book that he is reading is Real Braille. This is the Vista store. We have many items here for the blind and visually impaired. Talking watches, talking clocks, talking calculators, talking scales, thermometers, anything that can help the blind person live an independent life. We also have large print address books, large print check displays, color readers, any kind of item you can think of that will help the blind or visually impaired person to live an independent life with the help of all of these different kind of cooking items, etc.
Well, and Carmen, this is great to know because many people don't know where to go to get these assistive devices.
That's right.
That's fantastic.
They can come here, they can go online, that we have the catalog is online, and you can just call us up and order it, and our clerks there will spend as much time as you need to describe anything.
Tell me about the library quickly.
The Library for the Blind and Physically Handicapped is part of the National Library Service, Library of Congress.
Yes.
What I want you to know about that is not just for people who are visually impaired, but anyone who's print impaired. Anyone who has MS or MD, can't move their arms, is a paraplegic, maybe has very bad arthritis, they all can get the talking books.
Well, the talking books are the greatest thing on earth, especially when you're in the car. Now, Dan, the mobility training you received, tell me a bit about that.
That was one of Braille's greatest gifts to me was Carolyn Bryant, who was my mobility teacher. She came out to my house every Wednesday and worked with me a full morning on getting me around all the downtown streets, how to cross with the traffic, how to get on every single bus, subway, and she just made my life free.
That's what we do at Braille Institute. We give people the tools and the programs so that they can do the things that they want to do. The sky's the limit. They can still do everything they did before.
Well, it's centrally located. I mean, come on, Vermont and Melrose.
Yep.
You have a whole feeder system. It's like having, now I won't call them minor leagues, but teams in other towns.
And resources, all the resources that are available for people,
Right.
we let them know about those too.
Okay, now once again, I want to get the contact information back out there.
1-800-BRAILLE, B-R-A-I-L-L-E, or BrailleInstitute.org. Come visit us online.
Exactly. And thank you for bringing Val and Albert. They were really quite well behaved.
They're good partners.
Yeah, they are. They
That's
enjoyed this
great.
a lot.
Well, Carmen, Dan, our time is up for today's edition of Aging in LA. And thank you so much for being here, Carmen, and Community Relations Coordinator at the Braille Institute, and Dan Donlin, who became a student at the Institute when macular degeneration impaired his vision and made the right choice to go seek help.
Yep.
And now, it's time for today's Senior Stat Shot. A rapidly increasing proportion of the aging population experiences eye problems that make simple daily tasks difficult or impossible even when wearing glasses or contact lenses. Severe eye problems are not just a matter of getting older. The risk of severe eye problems has been found to increase significantly with age, particularly in those over age 65. In the 18 to 44 years bracket, about 5.5% of Americans have had vision loss. For those 45 to 64 years old, 12% suffer a decline in their vision. From 65 to 74 years of age, 13.5% have vision loss. And if you are over 75, 22% of seniors your age have vision loss. So, compared to Americans 18 to 44 years of age, seniors 65 to 74 years of age were nearly 3 times more likely to report vision loss. And those over 75 years of age were more than 4 times as likely as those 18 to 44 years of age to have had vision loss. And that's today's Senior Stat Shot. The Los Angeles Department of Aging produces this program with CityView, Channel 35, so that seniors living in Los Angeles and surrounding communities are well informed on the many issues that face them in everyday life. And also to let you know of the many services that the Department of Aging offers our senior citizens. And we'd like to hear from you with comments on the program, what you like, what you think can be improved, and your ideas for future programs. Please give us a call. The number's there on your screen, area code 213-252-4088. That's 213-252-4088. Call us with your comments and ideas. We look forward to hearing from you. I'm Paul Peterson for the Los Angeles Department of Aging, the people here at CityView Channel 35, and all of our guests on Aging in LA. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
My name is Eric.
My name is May.
We are in Chinatown.
You're watching LA City View, Channel 35, our city, our channel.
All right, good morning, Los Angeles. It's Wednesday, July 27th. This will be a City Council meeting. We meet 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. You can view us online, lacity.org or Channel 35. We have our 10 members present. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alarcon, Cardenas, Englander, Weezer, Koretz, Krikorian, LaBanche, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Wesson, Zion, Garcetti. 11 members present and a quorum. Mr. President.
First item of business, please.
Approval of the minutes.
Mr. LaBanche, second by Mr. Parks.
Mr. President, that brings us to commendatory resolutions for approval.
Excuse me, can you speak louder, please?
That brings us to commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Krikorian, second by Mr. Koretz.
Mr. President, at this time, would you like to run through the agenda?
Mr. Reyes, you pushed your button. Do you have a comment, Mr. Reyes? Okay, you're on the queue here, so we can take that off. Thank you. I thought you had an introductory statement or something. Mr. Garcetti, do you want to do an introduction first?
Sure.
Mr. Garcetti for a quick introduction, and then we will go through the agenda.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, it's a great pleasure to welcome my counterpart from Sao Paulo, who is here today. The president of the 55-member Sao Paulo City Council is here today. Jose Nito, who's here. He's a young man. I think he's 38 years old. 38 years old, was elected to the not only 55-member body, but in charge of almost 12 million people in Sao Paulo. Mr. Reyes has spent some time with him. Mr. LaBanche has spent some time with him. But he's here to look at the revitalization of the LA River. They have a river in Sao Paulo that's also very much in need of the same revitalization that we're doing, looking at redevelopment of certain neighborhoods, and also looking at infrastructure projects and housing throughout the city. Has some great people who are hosting him, but I wanted to officially welcome to the City of Angels and give him the opportunity if he'd like to say a few words. But please welcome our City Council President from Sao Paulo, one of the great cities of the world.
Thank you, the Angels. I say to I feel the good people here, and I'm trying to learn to good experiences them. I'm trying to learn a little bit English because I can understand it, but I cannot speak. But I can say I like the city, and the people are generosa. A população e vocês, tanto os homens públicos como aqueles que nos deram a oportunidade aqui chegar, como a Mia, foram muito generosos com a cidade de São Paulo, com o povo brasileiro. E o esforço que a minha geração está fazendo em São Paulo é para que a gente consiga ter resultados mais sustentáveis do nosso desenvolvimento urbano. A cidade que para o mundo é uma solução, virou um grande problema. E nós precisamos enfrentar esse problema preservando a água, preservando a vida, preservando um mecanismo saudável de viver na cidade. Thank you.
Thank you. The President said that it's been a very generous city to him. He's looking in his generation, is looking at sustainability, whether it's looking at the sustainability of water, of life. He appreciates the generosity and looks forward to our continuing friendship between the two nations. So thank you very much. Enjoy your visit. And
Mr. LaBanche has some
Thank you very much. We want to thank the President for coming. Our love is with Brazil. Interesting, in 2016, there will be the Olympic Games in Brazil, which we're very proud of. We're a two-time Olympic city. This day marks the 1 year prior to the third Games of London, which will be in 2012. So we're very happy as an Olympic city that Brazil will host the Olympic Games, but we're very happy that you're here. And Bahia, Salvador is a sister city of ours, and we work with that relationship. Thank you very much.
Mr. Reyes, for introduction.
I just wanted to also thank our dear guest, Colleagues, when you look at his environment, his universe, I believe the state is about 40 million. The immediate metropolitan region is about 11. And when you look at 14 different parties in the 55-member council, you talk about consensus building. My hat goes off to you, sir. But just as important is to thank the city staff, riding on the helicopter, being able to see the corridor, look at our water treatment plants, the Bureau of Engineering, the Planning Department, Ad Hoc River Committee, and all the professionals that were part of that discussion, sharing our experiences also gets us to solutions. So thank you so much, and I appreciate your visit. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome to our great city of Los Angeles. Thank you, Mr. Garcetti. Mr. Clerk, shall we proceed?
Mr. President, would you like to run through the agenda this time?
Let's do that.
Items 1 through 11 are items noticed for public hearing. No cards are on file.
1 through 11?
That is correct, sir.
Anything special, colleagues? 1 through 11, seeing no special, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
1 through 11.
Mr. President, items 12 through 31 are items for which public hearings have been held. Committee reports for items 6 and 12 have been submitted and distributed for Council's consideration. There are requests to continue items 15 and 21 to Revenue Day, which is August 10.
15 and 21 to continue. 29 special for Mr. Reyes.
Mr. President, would you like to continue 15 and 21 without objection?
Yes, 15 and 21 without opposition. We'll continue 15 and 21. Any specials, colleagues, on the remaining items? Mr. Parks?
Yes, sir. I'd just like to have item 16 received and filed. The lien has been
Mr. Parks, 16.
16 received and filed as the lien has been paid. Also 18 received and filed, and 19 because the liens have been paid.
Okay, it was hard to hear you. Can you say that again? 16, 18, and 19?
16, 18, and 19 to be received and filed as the liens have been paid.
Receive and file 16, 18, and 19. Receive and file 16, 18, and 19. And the remaining items, anything special, colleagues? Seeing none, open the roll. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Next items, please.
Mr. President, items 32 through 38 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Mr. LeBonge?
7, very special.
Very special for Mr. LeBonge. Any cards on those?
Yes, sir, we do. We have cards on items 34, 35, and 37.
So we'll hold 34, 35, 37. Colleagues on the remaining items, any special? Seeing none, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Next items, please. Mr. Englander.
31 forthwith, please.
31 forthwith, thank you. 31 is forthwith. Thank you, Mr. Englander. Next items, please, Mr. Clerk.
Very good. Items 39 through 41 are items scheduled for closed session. Would you like to hold those on the desk?
Yes. Closed session on the desk. Mr. Parks?
Yeah, I'd move that we...
Hold on a second, Mr. Parks. Hold on. It's difficult to hear your comments with everyone else speaking up here, so if we can please have it quiet.
Okay.
Thank you. Sergeant Arms, if you can please do that. Quiet these folks down. Mr. Parks.
Yeah, I would recommend 40 and 41 be in open session and item 39 in closed session, and ask the city attorney on 39 to have the the videotape prepared for so that we could see it.
Mr. City Attorney, did that meet your approval? All right.
Mr. President, if that's the case, allow me to read the recommendations for item 40 and 41 then before council votes. For item 40, there is a recommendation for settlement in the case entitled George Matakovich versus City of Los Angeles through a stipulated award for 78% permanent disability in the amount of $151,537.50, payable at the weekly rate of $270 plus a life pension at the weekly rate of $139.15. After taking credit for $22,613 in permanent disability advances, the total new money payout will be $230,225. For item 41, there's a recommendation for settlement in the case entitled Theodore Maylett versus City of Los Angeles through a stipulated award for 90% permanent disability in the total amount of $203,377 payable at a weekly rate of $270 plus a life pension at the weekly rate of $231.92. After taking credit for $10,350 in permanent disability advances, the total new money payout will be $252,352.53.
Very well. On those items, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes, 1 no.
Okay. Next item, please.
Mr. President, on the continuation agenda, item 45 is an item for which a public hearing has been held. This matter is a PCN and Council District 9 findings and recommendations are required.
Ms. Perry, 45.
Chair, I would like to hold that on the desk. We're
right.
awaiting the arrival of a letter from LAPD.
All right, we will hold number 45 on the desk. Thank you. All right, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, would you like to take general public comment at this time?
Special agenda.
Once you go in it, you can't go out.
All right, we can't. Okay, we're going to hold the special agenda then. We have 2 public comment cards. Candido Merez. Good morning, Candido.
Good morning, Mr. President, council members. Candido Merez, John Camaro with the Van Nuys Neighborhood Council. We're here today to invite each and every one of you to our 100 years of celebration in Van Nuys. Proud representative of the, resident of the 12th district, but our district has no boundaries from San Pedro to Chatsworth from the east side to the west side. So we're here today to drop off a flyer and then also invitations. Mr. Garcetti, we have an invitation for you. If I can, Percy. We want to make sure that everyone that is going to be running for office comes to the Van Nuys area and that they are introduced to the public there. So, Ms. Jan Perry, we have one for you. Everyone is welcome, but those who are going to be running, thank you, sir. You're very kind. But again, we're celebrating 100 years of Van Nuys, and Van Nuys has a lot of history, and the children of Van Nuys are going to be displaying that on August 29th from 5 to 10. We're also going to be having a car show and a dance afterwards. Mr. Corian, I want to thank you and Mr. Cardenas for your staff working with us. We were trying to hold the event in the corridor there at the mall, but it wasn't possible because of the cost. So St. Elizabeth Church has been kind enough to offer their facilities, and we're going to be able to save a lot of money and give a lot of things back to the community. Walmart is going to be donating over 30 bicycles, and we'll be giving them out to the children of the area. People don't know that Van Nuys is probably one of the poorest areas in our cities. They figure that Van Nuys is a balanced area, but when you take a look, 75% of the people of Van Nuys live in apartments. So, Mr. President, council members, we hope that you'll join us on August the 29th to celebrate the history not only of Van Nuys, but the history of this great city. And if I can leave you with a quote, I always like to leave a quote. Dwight Eisenhower once said, "The optimist thinks of himself and today. The statesman think of us and tomorrow." So I'm asking you to look into the future and support us on the 29th. And Mr. Wesson, God bless you. Thanks for being back, and our prayers are with you, sir.
Thank you. Leslie Ayres.
Good morning, City Council. I'm here today to discuss a little bit about the Los Angeles Water Department. I recently moved, and the issue that I think a lot of tenants are facing is the proration that goes on in between the move-in and the move-out. I was charged for energy by the LADWP for a time of period for which I had already moved out of that place. So the carry-forward bill included dates extending beyond the period of date that I was living there. So my concern is with respect to LADWP that there's a lot of tenants being overbilled for that carry forward prorated portion. So when I got my bill, I called LADWP, and their best response to me was, put it in writing and we'll check it out. I suggest going digital. And one more part. When I talked to LADWP, they told me my move-out date was the other person's move-in date. So I got billed up until that person moved in. That's a class action coming if someone decided that. But if you go digital, you could avoid that. So your assistance would be greatly appreciated if you could try to make sure that tenants aren't being, as they say, Mr. Reyes, bamboozled again. Because they're not only paying this portion, they're paying pass-through fees, SEP and registration fees, which are part of operating costs.
Thank you.
Just 1 second.
Go ahead, ma'am.
We pay market rate rent. Therefore, if once we pay market rate rent, those operating fees should be eliminated.
Thank you.
Thank you,
that's
City.
public comment for today. Thank you very much for your comments. That's the only card I have for public comment. There's no other cards in the box for public comment, so public comment's closed. Mr. Clerk, next item, please.
Mr. President, that would bring us to item 29, called special for Councilmember Reyes.
Okay, we also have the special items on the closed, on the special agenda. Mr. Reyes, you want to take that, then we'll go to the special agenda?
I think we can do 29 really fast. It's just a complimentary statement to the Planning Department. Despite the fact that the Planning Department has been cut by almost 40%, they are still managing to move forward with policies and approaches that help streamline our permits. This is one example in which we are collapsing several processes into one to start minimizing the number amount of time, a number of permits, and essentially streamlining and consolidating. So I just want to thank Mr. Rothman and Michael LeGrand and the staff for not giving up. It's easy to be passive aggressive and say, well, I only can do what I can. But here we're seeing a level of proactivity that we should all appreciate. I just want to take a moment to thank them. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Reyes, that was very quick. Thank you. On that matter, open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Very well. Mr. Clerk, we can now go into the special meeting, and we'll move those items.
Very good, sir. Alarcon, Cardenas, Englander, Koretz, Krikorian, Labange, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, West, and Zine Garcetti, 13 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
And that is items number 42, 43, 44?
That is correct, sir. Items 42, 43, and 44. Item 42 has two reports on file. Audit and governmental efficiency reports for all three items have been submitted and are now circulated for Council's consideration.
Okay, and we have cards on 42 and 44, so we'll take those public speakers on this matter. Mr. Labange?
7, this is just to resolve the stage for recreation and parks. I got a question answered. If you're okay, we can vote on it.
You want to take a vote on 32?
Yeah, I think I got my questions answered. I called it special.
Oh, I understand, Mr. Labange. We're already in the special meeting. We have to complete the special meeting before we can go back to the regular. We can't.
You don't have to, but I understand you are in a special meeting. I apologize. I thought I caught you.
All right. That's the rule according to the city attorney. Anyway, let's take number 42, Candido Merez. Number 42, Candido. And following that, Arnold Sachs on number 44. Those are public comments on 42 and 44.
I didn't know that was, Mr. President, I didn't know that was called special, but that's in regards to an audit, if I'm correct?
Yes. That's the photo red light audit.
Yes, sir. If I may, I just wanted to address the issue of audits. The Comptroller's been doing a lot of audits. Some are very specific. I think it's time that the Comptroller, Ms. Gruhl, does a top-to-bottom audit of the Department of Water and Power. If it wasn't for the fight that Ms. Perry and others have done, you know, the situation is getting very gray out there. A lot of individuals, a lot of families are struggling. So I would ask Ms. Gruhl or yourself, sir, when you become the Comptroller, we need a top-to-bottom audit of the Department of Water and Power.
Thank you. Arnold Sachs.
Thank you. Good morning, Arnold Sachs. It's kind of amazing that out of a $3.6 million contract that you would be coming up with $245,000 in profits from this program. But what's really amazing, with all the time that's been spent on this program, that nobody from the city has checked with other counties, other cities that have a red light program, and if they're being successful in their operations. We did hear one city in Orange County come before the council, but the mayor there said the spokesman said most of that revenue comes from red light, making right-hand turns on red lights. So we don't really know exactly how many people, that is, I guess, an offense. But the real question here again goes back to the state legislation and the courts not saying that if you don't sign a ticket, you don't have a failure to appear motion that would be heard before the court. So why hasn't that ever been looked into? Why hasn't that loophole ever been discussed? And this program might be successful, except we don't really want to push this issue. We'll spend some money, and in the end, we'll all look like fools. It's absolutely incredible that with all the time that you've spent on this program, nobody has decided that with the county paying the judges $50,000 a year, if it wasn't successful in LA County, this red light program, why is it implemented in other counties and other cities in the state? LA, small city? No. Largest city in California. Why can't it work? Let's look at the elected officials.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Sachs. There are no additional speaker cards. Mr. Zine, would you press your button, please?
I did.
It didn't register. Okay, there we go. Anybody out there? You're the only one in the queue right now.
Thank you. All right. Today's a good day because today, hopefully, we will vote to end the photo red light program in the city of Los Angeles. The program, as we know, no longer exists in the city after midnight, July 31st. Having said that, through discussions in committees, there does seem to be a need to continue some relationship with the vendor to clean up paperwork on pending citations that have been issued up until July 31st midnight. Having said that, we need to be clear on what we are doing here today on this particular vote. I don't want to give the wrong perception to the public that this program may continue in the future. As I noted, photo red lights will be gone in 4 days. Cameras need to come down immediately to not create a smoke screen to affect the hope that we may turn them back on. Also need to be clear on what type of record the court keeps on file in regards to these citations. Yesterday in committee, we were told by a Los Angeles Police Department sergeant that there is some court record that is maintained an individual failing to appear. Does not go to a warrant, does not affect the license, does not affect the insurance. We need that cleared, and that just came up yesterday in the Audit Government Efficiency Committee, which was a surprise to me and many others. I hope today we have some more clear answers on the court process, because it really will depend on whether we do or do not need additional support services from the vendor. As I understand, the courts do not process, the courts do not hold people responsible, which is one of the main issues regarding the situation. If this is indeed a voluntary pay program, how much follow-up should there be? What do we need to do with the vendor if it's a volunteer pay program? What type of processing is necessary? If we hire them to process any appeals, are we relying on the public pretending there may be a penalty if they don't pay? If the court is not enforcing, why are we going to pay a vendor to process an appeal that we already know we will lose, especially when appeals only represent about 5 to 10% of the issued citations? We need to be honest and transparent with this. This program did not work as was anticipated, and we need to be clear what we're going to do in the future with the clearing of the citations that are pending. In light of the past two-day hearings in Budget and Finance, Government Efficiency, we have a number of questions. I'm sure my colleagues do. So one of the first questions I have is for the police department, and the sergeant was asked to come back today to give a clear explanation because there's been conflicting statements regarding what the court does if an individual receives a photo red light citation. They get noticed by the collection agency. If they disregard and do nothing, what happens? That question is outstanding. We don't have an answer. We need an answer. We need clarification. So, Commander Chow, if you have that information, you represent from the police department, as you were in the hearing yesterday, that was a surprise to me and many others. So we need to get that clarified. If a person receives that in the mail, they do nothing with it, what are the consequences, if any? We need that clarified.
Yes, sir. Commander Blake Cho, Assistant CEO of Counterterrorism Special Operations Bureau, and Lieutenant Katona. We did check with the court yesterday after the audit meeting. The citation in the courts is held in a database and considered pending. It doesn't rise to the level of an FTA. It has no effect on credit, on the driving record that a traditional citation would have had an individual received a citation from a police officer.
So what does the court do with that information? I need to be clear with the public, and we don't want to deceive the public. We encourage them to comply with the law, follow the law, obey the law. But in this particular situation, we have been told by the police department it's a volunteer pay program. If you don't pay, there's no consequence. It doesn't go on your credit record, doesn't go on your insurance, doesn't go on DMV. But yesterday we're told that the court then holds that. So I could be driving your car, do a photo red light violation, you are the one who's then noticed, and you say, I don't know anything about this. What are the repercussions, if any, or does the court just hold this in abeyance forever, or do they purge out after a period of time? Again, this was information yesterday that surprised a lot of people. Lieutenant?
Councilman, essentially what happens is that after the identified court date that's on the citation that's issued passes, it goes to collections. It's termed referred to collections, and then it's referred to the county's collection agency for action.
And then they send out a letter, and if you don't respond to that collection letter, what happens after that? If you disregard that credit letter?
I believe they send a follow-up letter, and that's about the extent of it.
So it doesn't go on the credit rating, it doesn't go on your information sheet at all. But then the court, you're saying, or the commander said, it holds the record against you somehow.
Well, it's a court record that the citation exists, and they have a status of where it's at, and whether it was paid or not. But that it's our understanding that that type of information isn't normally accessed by the courts if you have some other action pending in the court.
So if a person gets a moving citation from an officer, signs that citation, and then goes to traffic school or pays it, does that then flag that they have an outstanding citation? They have to adjudicate somehow, either go to court or pay it, or if they just ignore it, what happens?
If I understand that correctly, if they've already got a photo red light citation and then they get another citation of some kind,
a written citation, they sign the promise to appear.
Does that show up during the process when dealing with the original or with the personal service citation?
Right.
No.
So it's basically information that doesn't go anywhere.
Well, I stand corrected. If the individual goes to the court and tries to pay that ticket,
on the one that they signed for.
On the one they signed for, I do believe the clerk has access to the court file and will be able to advise the person that they have an outstanding photo red light citation.
And then that person says, I don't know anything about this. I'm driving Commander Blake's car. He doesn't know I received that. So what happens then?
The individual could just walk away from the counter. That's the
So there's no consequences to it?
Not at that point, no.
So maybe the court needs to review that and decide if they want to purge those out of the system or keep them, because it doesn't seem a legitimate purpose to keep them since there's no consequences to it. Okay, I have some more questions, Madam President, but I'll bring those back later.
Thank you. Press your button again. Mr. Rosendahl.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Good morning. Could I ask the Police Commission gentleman to come before us? Folks, as you remember, the Police Commission voted to get rid of him. And they made that comment rather quickly, and they had 4 reasons. Please restate those reasons.
Yes, Councilmember. Richard T. Fank, Executive Director of the Board of Police Commissioners. The Police Commission considered the request from the Department for an awarding of a new contract based on an RFP that had been released, that contract to be effective August 1st of 2011. When they considered that, ultimately they rejected the contract recommendation, and there were 4 reasons. Based on the Department's report, it indicated there would be a deficit of $1.5 million per year of expenses versus revenue. And in light of the $41 million budget deficit the department possessed at that time, the Commission felt that was not responsible to move forward with that additional indebtedness to the city. Second, the potential consequences of Senate Bill 29, which was in the process at that time moving forward, which would transfer some responsibilities at a contract vendor who administers a photo red light program currently onto the law enforcement agency that has oversight over the program, and also has some additional signing and noticing requirements that would be additional expenses to the city. That bill, as I understand it, currently is in the Appropriations Committee of the Assembly in suspense file. The third reason is that the vendor was based in Arizona, and the fourth reason was that upon information given to the Commission by the Department, has been stated just by Commander Chow and Lieutenant Katona, is that the individual who receives the photo red light ticket, that citation, if it is not paid, is not forwarded to DMV, and there is no hold place to ensure that there is payment for that citation. And based on those 4 reasons, the Commission decided to not approve the RFP. And that's that process that gets us to this point, because the current contract with the vendor expires on July 31, 2011.
Okay, that's a mouthful, but that's what they went through.
That's correct, sir.
Is DOT here? I'd like to ask one quick question of them. We had the mayor, as you remember, colleagues, from a community, Loma Linda, who said they had all these red lights too, and they decided to just extend. Mr. Fisher, I see you're in the room. Come on up, DOT. That they just extended the yellow light. And by extending the yellow light, they were able to solve their issues and not have to go forward with that. And that was their logic. Others have said to me, Councilman, what if you had the red light and kept the red light on both directions? Wouldn't that also be effective? And so, DOT, what's your thoughts on those 32 intersections in our city in terms of just extending the red light or extending the yellow light and be done with this as an issue when you hear the police commission say, A, we're not collecting the money, B, it's costing us money, and many of us find that this whole red light thing is ridiculous to begin with. Mr. Fisher.
At the 32 locations, and in fact at all signalized locations in the city, we have an extended yellow period already. We designed the yellow period appropriate for the speed limit, and then we even go beyond that to 5 miles an hour above the speed limit. So we already have a very generous yellow time currently. With regard,
have you thought about further extending it since these discussions have begun?
Well, but let me say also, we also have an all red period, depending on the width of the intersection. So we have a generous period to allow you to enter it and then to exit the intersection. Now, certainly we would consider a possible extension if we had a problem that would be appropriate to resolve in that matter. But we also would have to look at other tools that would be appropriate to resolve a problem, such as, should we put in a left turn phase? Should we put in speed feedback signs? Should we reduce the speed limit? There are a number of tools available, but what we probably would not want to do is to extend the yellow such that we would encourage people to run the yellow that's already there.
Yeah.
We want to encourage them to stop if they can, but not encourage them to run it. So we don't want to make it too long.
Right. Have we talked to the mayor of Loma Linda and looked at how they stopped that and its impact?
Do you know?
I have attempted to contact the Loma Linda's signal timing staff, and they have not responded to my inquiry.
Okay, because the mayor made it very clear that that was the way he successfully dealt with the issue. Well, colleagues, we're going to vote on it, and obviously I believe in terminating the red light camera effective the end of the month of July. We in the Budget Committee unanimously took the position, Mr. Englander made a motion that we would spend a few more months in collecting the monies and shutting the system down, but effective the end of July, it's over, and I just hope that my colleagues as a group will also go in that direction. Thank you, Madam President.
Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl, and thank you for your leadership as Transportation Chair in looking at this, and thank you, Mr. Zine, as well. I was happy to second the motion way back when that kind of launched a lot of this moving forward. I think we know where we're at today. Thank you to the Commission. It's actually rare that the Commission sometimes will take as what might be seen as politically risky a step, but I think it was a really smart one for the people of Los Angeles. I don't want to repeat a lot of what I've said. I've said it on the record, but I do think the state has failed us. The state has failed making this work for local governments. The state has failed for this being a cost recovery for local governments. The state has also failed making sure this goes into people's records. And until the state will play ball, I think they're probably going to write LA off because they don't mind the status quo in the rest of the state. They still get money for the court system with very little cost of administration. But the point of this has never been to punish people for no reason at all. It's been to make our streets safer. And we have mixed data at best of whether this does. We know there's other tools on the timing of lights that can achieve that as well. And so today it is time for us to shut it down and shut it down now. It is time for us to move forward and to move on. If the state comes back to us with changes, we are open ears. I am open ears. But until that moment, this is cut and dry. Let's make sure that our streets are returned to a place where we can re-envision this in the right way. Government so often overreaches. A $500 ticket for a family that is paying $650 rent is unacceptable. $100 teaches people a lesson, especially if that comes back to the city so that we can administer this and make it go to other places. But with the evidence being pretty unclear, I think that we can work together. I look forward to the police department, too, on the traffic side, helping us on those intersections. I think that human element is as effective as anything, and working with DOT to see what other things we can do to experiment with things that don't cost as much, that are better for our drivers and better for our communities. So I rise in support of being able to pull the plug now and to do it quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcetti. Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Madam President. Let me ask Mr. Fisher, on the comments that were made earlier about the additional yellow light, and you said we do a generous yellow light. Have we looked at Loma Linda or the mayor that was here before? Did we look at their system at all?
I have attempted to contact the staff that was directly involved in signal timing, and they have not responded to my inquiry.
Do we have any knowledge of whether when they changed to the expanded yellow, whether they kept the system in place to document whether there was changes in citations? Or did they just close down the system and then extend the yellows?
My understanding, based upon newspaper articles and the testimony of the ex-mayor of Loma Linda, is that they had experimented with adding an extra second of yellow time and saw immediate results on the reduction of the number of violations.
Yeah. But I was just wondering, did they document it by allowing the red light system to document that?
I was trying to get information on how they calculated the yellow time that they had before they added the extra yellow time, and I was unable to secure that information. They did not respond to my request.
Okay. Let me just ask the police department one thing. I just want to clarify from yesterday. There was a comment made that that the court keeps track of this information. Commander, yesterday was a comment made that the court keeps track of the information. Is this information used for future ability or hold on getting a driver's license later?
It's not transmitted to the DMV in any way.
It's not the DMV?
As far as we know, no.
Okay. Now, what was said yesterday as to what the courts did with that information?
It's part of the court record. That's how they track the citation, but it's our understanding they do not refer to it when looking at other cases that are pending for that individual.
Okay. All right, thank you. Colleagues, having been involved with this when I was in the police department, I think in the long term we'll find it's a mistake to get rid of this program. I think it's one of those issues that there is no dollar you can put on the saving of a life. There's no dollars you can put on the saving of injuries and serious injuries at intersections. The other issue, if we're concerned about the $500 ticket, it's totally out of our control. It's a state mandate, and when you add all of the penalty assessments, that's why it's up to $500. So even if the new legislation comes in that gives the court the ability to make this more meaningful, you still will have no control over the price of the ticket. And the ticket, if I remember correctly, are like a third of what the overall cost is when you subtract all the penalty assessments in which the state legislature puts on them to fund other programs. I think that the one thing I think the council in the last meeting asked DOT to look at extending the yellow or also extending our use of four-way red. The only thing I'd ask is that if we're truly going to do that, that we allow the system to document the changes rather than just throw it out as a philosophical view, that we can actually document that if you added a second, that you have technology now that can actually see, not that you process the tickets, but if there's some way in the negotiation with the company that you can use the machinery to document whether this helped at all or whether there was a reduction in tickets, so we'd all know it's not just folklore, it's not just somebody thought of it early this morning, but it actually can be documented on an intersection within the city of LA because the equipment is there. And again, I would not recommend that we process any new tickets, but I would certainly take advantage if we can negotiate with the company that their technology can help us validate an extra second or a four-way red actually made an impact at any one of these 32 intersections.
Mr. Englander.
Yes, thank you. And I just wanted to ask a few points that were brought up in committee as well. Just wanted to get some more clarification on this. And I know there's been a lot of terminology that's been sort of thrown out there in the press and with the public, and letting folks know that this is strictly a volunteer program, that there are no consequences. And I wanted to clarify that because I think we owe it to those who have gotten the citations. There's still around 65,000 roughly citations out there pending and looming out there. And there are consequences from my understanding. There could be. In fact, they're severe and could be even more so than just a fine or losing your driver's license. It could be an employment issue. In fact, I've got a question with the police department. The city of Los Angeles is the largest employer in the city. And if we have an employee in the city, let's just narrow it down and say if we have a police officer driving a city vehicle on city time, violating traffic laws and not reporting it, and they get one of these photo red lights and fail to do anything about it, are there any consequences at all to that police officer? Or are we telling them it's strictly voluntary, don't worry about it, there's no consequences? I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
No, obviously, because he is, driving a city vehicle on a city time, the photo red light data comes to Emergency Operations Division. They take a look at it, and then it's forwarded to the commanding officer of whoever that employee works for. That would open up, investigation, and the commanding officer can take appropriate action. It could be documented on a comment card or some other form of discipline.
Okay, so just in the police department alone, we've got a process of dealing with that and letting our officers know that there are consequences. It will be dealt with, and it's not a voluntary system. And I want to make sure we don't have a double standard out there. I believe that every department has various policies throughout the city of LA. I believe the county, from what I've been told, has similar policies for their officers and firefighters and all of their employees as well. I understand there are delivery companies out there, from FedEx to UPS, from Domino's Pizza, that if you're a delivery driver, you're required to notify your employer if you get one of these. You can't just ignore it. You could lose your job. We're experiencing right now one of the worst unemployment rates that we've ever seen in our lifetime. Yet we're telling people, don't worry about this. It's voluntary. There's no consequences. You could lose your job. That's, to me, is a pretty big consequence. With that, and I think we need to look at that. That's critical, and make sure that we're on the same page. There are, as reported in the LA Times this morning, I understand that if you're doing a job search, and again, going back to unemployment, it could come out that if you pull court records, we don't know this with certainty, but from my understanding, and it says it here in the LA Times as well, that if an employer or someone else chooses to run a court background search, it could come up that you have this outstanding, and it could cause that issue that you don't get employed because of it. It's in a background search. The other part of that is what happens if you do show up. We have a lot of these 65,000 outstanding warrants out there, if you will, or citations that have showed up to court, that have pleaded guilty. In fact, some of them have worked out payment plans already with the court. What happens if you've worked out a payment plan? If you're one of these 65,000 outstanding, we have not been paid for, you went to court, you admitted to guilt, and you worked out a payment plan with the court, and you stopped paying. Are we still saying it's a voluntary program, or is that different?
I couldn't answer that, Ron. Do you have any information on that?
No, I couldn't speak to that.
Yeah, that's something the court would have to...
Because according to the courts, and according to the LA Times, you've already admitted to guilt. You are making a payment plan, and you are guilty for that. You'll be liable then for penalties and all of that, and you can still risk suspension of your driver's license. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's not truly voluntary, and there are consequences. I just wanted to point that out to folks that are listening, that there are a lot of consequences. You could lose your job, depending on where you work. And so, to me, that's very serious. The other part of that was addressed was the issue of how much money this has cost the city of Los Angeles, and that we're losing money on it. I wanted to point out, folks, that in the report, it says that it's $2.5 million that we're losing. 1.5 million of that was for the installation. The city of Los Angeles, out of all the cities in the entire United States that has this program, is the only city on the record, and this came out in both committees as well, the only city that actually paid for their own installation. And that's because of MOUs, and that's because of our union contracts, and that's fine. The city council agreed that that's the measure we should go through. I wasn't on the council then, but at that time, that's the process to which this body took. And so that was $1.5 million just for the installation. There's another roughly $800,000 to $1 million in police time, in personnel and DOT towards the program right now. That's $2.5 million if you add it together. And they're saying, well, that's what we're losing. Well, we're actually not technically losing that if you do the math. That was the cost of the city. They're also re-amortizing that $1.5 million installation. And the amortization tables are faulty because you can't say that we've extended the contract and therefore we're going to re-amortize those costs. We ate those costs once and we spent the money. That's gone. So just because a contract is extended, you can't say, well, it's got a longer shelf life, and therefore we're going to open up the amortization tables longer and assume the totality of the $1.5 million installation as a total cost loss of the project. It's not. We bore those costs at one time and they're gone. So what I propose is that we immediately, and without going through, I know my time is up, without going through all the problems with the system, I think we all agree that we want to immediately end and terminate issuing the citations. I support that. And figuring out some type of phase out so it doesn't cost even more money, and we let the public know that there are some serious consequences for failure to pay.
Thank you, Mr. Englander. Mr. Koretz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think on the subject of it being voluntary, I don't think anyone has really put the message out there that it's voluntary and don't pay your tickets. The problem is, though, and there are a lot of consequences that are out there potentially, so I'm not recommending that for anyone. The problem is the city doesn't have a lot of the collection mechanisms. That's the point for us. So we lose a lot of money. The point isn't don't go and pay your tickets. But the city we'll have about 40% of those tickets uncollected because the court doesn't do the right thing and allow us to collect them. So that's just reality. It's part of why this costs us money. My main objection to this whole thing is that I believe the same safety can be achieved by signal timing changes. And I believe DOT has been pretty resistant to this concept. In Budget Committee, we found that DOT was not planning on immediately implementing the measure that the Council had passed 12-0 to change the signal timings on all the signalized intersections plus all those additional ones that were identified as more dangerous. They were waiting for this to be referred to back to committee, which was never discussed by Council. The motion was go and do it. So this never would have been done because it never was going to be referred to committee. I don't know whether that was an honest mistake or a way to try to duck doing it. But the department has now promised to get it done in around 2 weeks. Mr. Fisher, even today, has said they'd consider doing this extension, even though not only has it been passed by Council, but it was reiterated in committee, they have to do it. There's no question they're resistant. DOT claims that it complies with the MUTCD, which is the traffic manual, on yellow light timing. However, the times indicated in the manual are just minimum times. Nothing prevents the city from adjusting upwards. And they claim that the benefits of longer yellow times seen in other jurisdictions could be due to prior yellow times not being in compliance with these traffic manuals. The fact is, anywhere where there's a city that already had a signalized intersection, by nature they were in compliance. So when Loma Linda added a second of yellow timing to their already compliant yellow times, it went down by 90%. If we did that as instructed, a second of yellow plus some additional time in a four-way red, there's no question we would both improve safety and eliminate virtually all of these violations, which would completely eliminate the need for red light cameras. There's no value to this. It could be done by signal timing. We don't need to charge people $500 for tickets. We don't need to have the city losing a lot of money. We don't need to keep dealing with an Arizona contractor. It's time to end this contract once and for all.
Mr. Labange.
Thank you very much. Mr. TFAC, how are you today?
I'm well, sir. Yourself?
Good. What are the 3 E's as it relates to traffic?
Engineering, enforcement, and education.
Engineering, enforcement, and education. So we had a enforcement issue here that we use this technology, which is engineering, to educate the public to stop at these. Do anyone remember the rash, and I'm just saying this, the rash of rear-end collisions that took place in Los Angeles prior to the development in the last 20 years? There was a rash, just like there was a rash, and I don't want to say it, remember the rash of the RTD accidents and the rash of the DWP water line breaks. Rashes happen. This is a horrible rash, okay? I don't like the fact. And is it, if you go through the light right now, Mr. TFAC, and your picture's taken, you get a ticket, is it $500 when they send it to you, or does it accelerate? How does that happen?
I don't have the exact amount of the citation, but it is approximately $550, yes.
Right the one time. It's not a graduate
That's my
cost,
understanding, yes.
You know, on that issue. I know in my district at Beverly and Western, the south side of Beverly Boulevard, the bold banks built right to the corner, visibility problem. Your West Traffic recommended it, and it did decrease that. The thing that I don't want council members, us to do, is to throw what we call technology away. I hope something comes back that is technology proof on that. Mr. Fisher, you're a longtime veteran of city service. In fact, you were here for the Olympic Games, correct?
That is correct.
And you and others developed a system of single timing with loops that are now used internationally, correct?
That is correct.
And on this particular situation here, Loma Linda's in Orange County. No offense to Orange County. Loma Linda has big, wide roadways, like 3 lanes and a center island. I don't know if you could compare it to the substandard streets in parts of our city that have these tight intersections. So I don't nice of the mayor of Loma Linda. I wish we knew his name to give him all the credit that everybody's praising Loma Linda. But Los Angeles is a different factor. Do you see in the future, because you probably attend or read international and national trade journals on transportation, do you see this technology in other states working?
The national experiences at red light photo enforcement has been very successful in reducing right-angle collisions at intersections, and the experience in Europe has shown that automated enforcement is indeed very effective as well. We certainly recognize the shortcomings that have been enumerated here at the meeting regarding the red light photo enforcement system, but we do feel that having beefed up enforcement, automated enforcement, is a vital tool in improving traffic safety.
And do you use that for speed too? Speed. Do you use enforcement on speed, or do other states use it on speed?
There are some states that have speed enforcement, automated speed enforcement, that is currently not legal in California.
Do you remember Cliff Branch, University of Colorado graduate, National Football League player for the Oakland and Los Angeles Raiders? When he would play, they would hold up a sign that speed kills, because Cliff was so fast. Speed does kill on intersections. Speed does kill on streets. Technology may help in the future. After this whole discussion, I hope we do come back, because as others have said, if it's one life, it has made a difference. No question, this should be reorganized. No question. My final question to anyone at the table. In the city of Los Angeles, the sheriffs do have jurisdiction over the Orange Line, which transfers from my district in the Valley to Mr. Zine's district in the West Valley. And they have lights, traffic lights, red light cameras at those intersections. Are they still going to work in the city of Los Angeles? Are they still involved? Do they have our problem? Did we consult with them? Because I did get a call once from someone who got a ticket there, and I said, you got to pay. There was her pretty face right in the mirror looking right up at the light, because she missed it at Chandler and Tujunga. A good citizen, but she missed the signal. Is it still going to operate in the Valley?
Those systems operated by Metro would still be operated.
All systems. So this is not. So not all red lights will be terminated in the city of Los Angeles.
That is correct.
And do we have? And that includes. Does that will include the Expo line, which will open later this year, and the Gold line to? So we got to make that straight. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thanks, Mr. Lamont. Mr. Reyes.
As I listen to this dialogue, it's striking to hear some of the assertions, and out of due respect to you, Mr. Fisher, when Councilmember Corrett speaks to directives, promotions, and how we look at signalization, and if I heard correctly, the department chose not to take action because of supposed to go to committee and it never did, and was diverted or not. I didn't hear a response from Mr. Fisher, and I was hoping if you can just, for the record, state what is actually going on, and are we doing what we are supposed to be doing based on these motions?
Let me say that if there was a misunderstanding about how we thought the item was going to be agendized before committee, we apologize for that. We certainly intend to follow up on the motion that was approved with regard to looking at our yellow times and red light times at our intersections. And we will certainly keep trying to make contact with the city of Loma Linda to find out what their conditions were like before and what they've achieved with whatever additional yellow time they install. We certainly want to find out what their yellow times were in the before period, what their speeds are like. Do they have an automated signal system like we do with ATSAC to reduce stops? We certainly want to find out everything about them. And certainly through our traffic safety investigations, we will look at yellow times as one of the tools in our toolbox to see if we can correct a traffic safety situation. But we want to point out that that is just one tool in the toolbox, and there are many other things that we need to look at. It is not the only answer and the quick fix for everything. The other thing I wanted to mention is that As we talk to other cities, other major cities, we haven't, again, talked with Loma Linda and discussed what yellow times and all red times we use. We are virtually alone in the fact that we not only use what is prescribed in the state manual, but we go beyond that by policy. We go beyond that. And we also have a stated policy for including additional red time. And most of the jurisdictions we talk to, whether it's Anaheim, Santa Ana, San Diego, and other major cities, do not have that policy. So we are already going beyond what most do, and certainly beyond what we're required to do. But we won't stop there. We'll continue to look at whether it would be appropriate to do more.
Are we going to prioritize those intersections that have a track record, if, for lack of a better word, of where they're prone to more accidents for whatever reason? Are we going to be able to prioritize that way, or we're still trying to assess the system for what it is?
Well, under Pauline Chan's leadership, she's taking over our traffic safety programs, and we're looking at all kinds of traffic collision patterns throughout the city to determine the most appropriate measures, whether it's how to get to school safely or whether it's how to traverse the intersection safety. And with her staff and over a period of time, we'll be looking at all collision patterns to see what is the most appropriate measure to implement to reduce that pattern.
Could we just investigate a way to at least notify the council offices and any other respective entity that could help us inform the public of these dangerous intersections? District 1 is in the middle of a region. We get cross traffic from surrounding cities, from surrounding areas that are driving through our neighborhoods. And folks drive through here and they want to get in, they want to get out fast, but it's the community people that are living in these neighborhoods that tend to pay the price at all different levels. So perhaps we should start thinking more about how we advocate for safety and not rely just on this one camera, but about communication and awareness and education for these facilities and these intersections. We have 3 high schools built within 8 blocks in one part of my district. Thousands and thousands of students are now emerging on these sidewalks, they're crossing these intersections, and it's a whole new dynamic that didn't exist not even 5 years ago. So how we educate each other and how we inform the teachers, the administrators of schools, the parent groups, the neighborhood watches, the neighborhood councils, so we can be more aware and alert of these intersections that tend to be dangerous, and that might help alleviate some of the pressure when a tragedy occurs, when a life is lost because of the lack of awareness. And that's something we should think, I think, more globally in terms of addressing these concerns.
That's a very good point, and it's not just technology. It's reaching out, it's collaboration with the community, with schools, and if you would allow, Pauline Chan can maybe just very briefly describe her efforts in that regard.
I think the department would work with the council office to look at the school sites, and especially those that are already experiencing high crash rates. We have now new tools that allow us, that the state had funded, to allow us to look at the school sites with the highest crashes in the city. And through that, we can be much more competitive in getting education as well as infrastructure grants from the state and the federal government to acquire funding to support this kind of education programs and communication with the schools. We have already started that process as part of the Safe Routes to School program, and
Right.
we are submitting applications that are now data-driven,
Right.
and that are, of course, we're looking for projects where we want to be able to engage with the community more rather than sitting outside of the community and just looking at engineering measures.
No, I thank you. 5 years ago, I had a painful experience with DOT just getting the maps. And we finally got statistics, the maps, and what you're saying today is a far cry from what I was hearing 5 years ago. But then again, 5 years ago, these high schools weren't built yet. They're built now, and lives right now are at risk, I believe. Thank you very much.
Mr. Alarcon.
Yes, council members. I want to stand up to commend the police department and the transportation departments. They've been getting picked on, I think, on this issue unfairly. First of all, I want to commend you because your primary motivation on this issue has been to save lives, and that you should be commended for. The fact of the matter is that if the state did provide mechanisms to allow us to access these fines, I believe there would be hardly any questions about approving this contract. I don't think it's the fault of DOT or the police department that the council changed their minds. I don't think it's your fault that the commission changed its mind. And yet you're getting picked on, I think unfairly, for trying to implement our policy because we accepted it. It was the same with the gold card. It wasn't DOT that voted to implement the gold card program. We voted to implement that program. The council, I wasn't even here, but I'm saying this council voted to do that. So I would just say that let's not pick on the messenger. I happen to believe that automated signal traffic controls systems save lives, and I think that notwithstanding the situation that we have with the state law and the court system, that should be a consideration relative to whether we believe it is truly saving lives, and I think it is. But I also don't believe we should beat a dead horse, and let's move on. We've got other fish to fry, but I hope that we don't exclude the possibility that state law could change, the court system could respect that, the police commission may change its mind when that happens, and we should be open to the concept of the red light programs in the future. So I will support the overwhelming support, I believe, to end this program, but not permanently. My vote will be until we can come back with a better set of realities. The council made decisions making some assumptions about the court system and the state that just didn't, and those are assumptions that were very valid. Let's just say that there were no mistakes made. There were some assumptions that were valid that did not pan out, and that's why this program is not. This is not the time and place for this program. But let's not ignore all the realities in other parts of the country that don't have these court and state roadblocks. That in fact it is saving lives in those jurisdictions. So I don't have to press my button again. I just want to make one other point. Can we put this thing about the 1 second on the yellow lights? We already do that, do we not? And so are we maximizing the use of the yellow lights or not? I'm getting mixed signals here.
When we look at the additional yellow time that we provide, assuming that traffic is going 5 miles an hour.
No. 1 second. They keep talking about 1 second. Can you answer that question directly, Mr. Fisher?
Generally, we're providing about 1 second more when we look at the additional yellow time plus all red time.
Already on these signals?
Yes.
So can we put that to rest?
Mr. Zine?
Thank you, Madam President. The voluntary comment that was made by the Los Angeles Police Department, not the council, the police department. Voluntary pay program. I want to clarify that part. The question that we're debating on these three issues is the police commission report saying stop the program, the audit by the controller, and whether this body wants to conclude the program. Excuse me. I think the recommendation is going to be to discontinue the program at the end of July, and then the cleanup that we need to do, and that'll be resolved with the CLA's office and the vendor. And I want to put it for the record that I authored a motion that went to Sacramento to take photo red light to a local jurisdiction would be administrative process. The fine would be lowered, it'd be administrative appeal, since we pay for everything, and the state seems to be very greedy with the dollars, and the state shot that down. They wanted to maintain the status quo and continue receiving those dollars. But as far as where we're at today, the question is, and I think it's unanimous, to stop the program, and then the next phase is how do we then remove the equipment, and how do we end up cleaning up those citations, not the 500,000 or 600,000 or 65,000 that are outstanding, but the process that's going to take place. Are we any closer to any resolution on that as we conclude this matter? And maybe the CLA's office needs to come forward. And Ms. Gibson, on the cleanup, as we know that there are citations being issued through the end of this month, and the process and what we're going to do in that particular phase, because once the citation goes to the police department, it then goes to the collection agency, they send out the letter, and I understand there's 60 days to take care of that. What do we have in line for the cleanup, not for the continuation of the citation issuance, but to whoever wants to pay and to collect that and process and get that closed out? Where are we on that?
We would have to negotiate an extension with the current contractor because the most critical component...
Can you speak up, please?
The most critical component of being able to phase down the program is to enable LAPD to continue to have access to the evidence data, and that data is maintained by the contractor. We received a proposal this morning. We really haven't had a chance to completely evaluate it and to be able to get back to the contractor, but that is the next step. So the action that needs to be taken by the council is to authorize an amendment to the contract to allow the phase down. In addition, because of the fact that the city attorney has advised that the contractor is still not in compliance with the Arizona policy, the council is going to have to approve an exemption to the policy.
Okay, so how long a period of time are we talking about? Because I think it's clear that we want to stop the program, but there's still those citations out there and the process in place where someone wants to contest the citation. We need to adhere to the rule. But how long a period of time are we talking about with gathering this information and processing?
Our recommendation would be to have a 6-month contract because we believe that the bulk of the citations in terms of diminishing returns is going to decline after a 6-month period. After the 6-month period, we would suggest an evaluation of the revenues that we have gained during that period of time, and then subsequent to that, allow for a month-to-month contract with a maximum of 1 year.
Okay, why can't we do a month-at-a-time contract? See, my concern is that if we don't cut the tie on this, it'll continue to linger and linger and linger indefinitely. And I understand that originally the company wanted $72,000 the first month to continue processing. That, to me, is obviously extremely expensive. But now we're coming to the dollars and cents. Why don't we condition on a 1 month at a time, and as we find whatever is happening, and then we continue it, or we stop it at that particular time? I've heard 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, which I think is really counterproductive to what we're trying to accomplish. And then the other question is to remove the equipment to say we're done with this program.
The contract also has a termination for convenience clause, so as a practical matter, all we need to do is give them written 30 days notice and we can terminate within that period of time. The reason we think 6 months is appropriate is because, as you indicated, once the citation is issued, the violator or the registered owner has within 60 days to respond. If the individual decides that he or she wants to contest it in court, the court does allow, frankly, up to a year in order for the trial to be held. So we want to have a reasonable time frame so that we can maximize our ability to capture whatever revenues we can.
And I think the loss will be greater than the revenues we collect.
Well, I think, in terms of the proposal, I don't think that the cost proposal that they have offered to us is unreasonable. We just need the opportunity to be able to discuss it further with them. They've come down on their excuse me. They've come down on the pricing for the first month, which I think is critical relative to the transition, because there does need to be a transition from the vendor for LAPD to be able to absorb those activities. Beyond the first month period, what we are paying for essentially is to be able to access that data. That really is the critical component.
And as far as those that are a year, 2 years, or whatever, 5 years old, we're not going to be pursuing those particular collections.
Well, if we're talking about a phase down, we think that the 6-month period with a month-to-month beyond that, up to a maximum of a year, is a reasonable time frame. And certainly we would be reporting back to Council, we would suggest on a quarterly basis to ensure that the program is cost-effective relative to the phase down.
So we could say that we will conclude the program as far as enforcement, and we will then come up with an agreement not to continue the program, but an agreement for the cleanup phase, and that will be a specific period of time at a specific cost.
Correct. And in order for the contract to be executed, it does need to be approved by Council, so we will be reporting back to you as to what the cost will be.
This will be a new contract.
Well, it'll be an amendment to the existing contract.
Okay. And then regarding the equipment being taken down?
There was a suggestion in committee yesterday that the contractor be responsible for removal of all aspects of the deconstruction. We did discuss that with the vendor. The proposal that we received this morning did not acknowledge that the vendor would be responsible for removal of all equipment. So that's an issue that we need to follow up with them. The other concern that we have is, as we had stated, in Budget and Finance Committee, there is the issue of contracting out bargaining unit work. This work was originally done by city employees, and for us to change that is going to be an issue that the unions are going to be concerned about.
So you have some homework to do on this
Yes.
particular matter. And then one final question. People are now asking for refunds. Refunds on the $500+ paid. What's your response to that?
The court will
The
not.
city gets $157 on these citations. And as far as refunds,
The court will not refund.
so if they paid it, and that's the way it goes. And they can't now then say, I want to go to trial, since they've already, if those that have taken care of it.
They pay the ticket.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Krikorian. Thank you, Mr. Zahn. You're 5 minutes over.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to follow up on this point about phase out, because I'm unclear. I will admit, as I'm standing here, I don't have the contract in front of me, but didn't the contract provide for what the obligations of the city and what the obligations of the vendor would be upon the contracted termination date of that contract? It's hard for me to imagine that a contract would be negotiated that didn't specifically provide what the obligations of the parties are at the conclusion of the contract term. So why are we on July 27th trying to negotiate an amendment to a contract that expires 4 days from now? Isn't that already provided in the contract?
Terry Martin Brown, Assistant City Attorney. I'd like to address that question, if I may. In Section 20 of the contract, which is titled Conclusion of Agreement, Councilmember, it does say, at the conclusion of this agreement, contractor shall complete all program work associated with the final violation images captured by the system on the last day of the agreement. Such work shall include, but not be limited to, citation processing, citation approval procedures, violation viewings, preparation of court case packages, and other court appearances as identified in Appendix B. Now that paragraph really must be read in conjunction with Appendix B, which is the statement of work, and which may be, it's a long document, so it's an adequate basis for a bit of confusion. But in that document, it does say specifically that while the contractor may be responsible already, we've paid them as part of their monthly fee of $8,125 to process the citations through the citation issuance point. The contract specifically talks about, the appendix specifically talks about violation viewings, where the contractor shall arrange with traffic violators all viewing appointments with the LAPD. and if necessary, the LAPD will request that the contractor provide the digital video images of the violation prior to the scheduled viewing date. So it becomes a question of how do we accomplish this, but further, specifically regarding people who just pay the citation upon receiving it, don't contest it, it's not a problem. The citation will have been processed through that point. People who demand a trial make it necessary for a court package to be prepared, for the documentary evidence to be presented in such a format that it can be introduced at trial as evidence. It may also be necessary
and if
for
I may, on that point, doesn't the language of the contract provide that it's the contractor's obligation to complete the work relating to preparation of court case packages and court appearances?
Yes, it does. But again, looking carefully at Appendix B, the statement of work, and the section entitled Court, it begins that this only applies throughout the term of this entire agreement. Contractors shall provide those things. The agreement terminates on July 31st, 2011. And once the agreement terminates, the contractor is only liable by the terms of this agreement, the entire agreement, including the Appendix B, statement of work, to process those citations through the citation issuance, maybe a few more things as detailed in this long appendix, but preparation of the court packages, court appearances, any other form of perhaps data storage or retrieval or transferring that to LAPD is not covered.
I'm not, going to give an off-the-cuff legal opinion, but it seems to me that interpretation of a contract doesn't make sense when the obligation is to process tickets that are issued up until the very last day of the contract. You can't complete it. It is impossible for the vendor to have been anticipated to be required to complete that work up until the last day of the contract and have it done before the expiration of the contract. It's physically impossible to do. It seems to me obvious that the language of that contract suggests that it was the intent of the parties that the processing of that contract the processing of those violations would continue after July 31st. It's impossible to do it otherwise.
Well, I can see where you might think that if you do not have this entire Appendix B statement of work
I'd like
in
to
front
see
of
it.
you.
I'd like to see it,
I'm-
if I may.
I will certainly get a copy
And
of it
I'll press
to
my
you.
button again after I have a chance to look at it. But look, whether that is true or not, it seems to me that the last thing we should be doing is somebody said, we need to stop beating this dead horse. Yes, we need to stop beating this dead horse. The contract expires July 31st. Let it die. Enough already. Let's just be done with this and move on.
Mr. Parks is our next speaker, then Mr. Labange, Mr. Kritz, and Mr. Englander. Mr. Parks. Wait, okay, we'll hold Mr. Parks. Mr. Labange?
Just want to ask the staff to just check on the orange line, the gold line, the expo line, the blue line, any of those that do have lights within the city of Los Angeles. And so there is still red light cameras at Railroad Crossing, and they still will be enforced. Okay, thank you so much. Nice to see the city attorney.
Mr. Koretz.
Thank you. First question to the city attorney. I know we had this extended same discussion in committee, and it was pointed out that this is your opinion, but at least at that time it had not been run by the city attorney. Has he looked at this yet, and is it now his opinion, or is it still your opinion as his representative?
Sir, it is still my opinion, and I'll be very happy to read the rather lengthy terms of the appendix, and I think that you would change your mind about how you view this contract.
On my time, I've read it already. I totally disagree with you, and I have asked, and you had agreed to get the city attorney's opinion. I'm surprised that we're now here before the whole council and you still haven't I would ask again that you get his opinion and transmit it to the council at the earliest possible date. On my own time, other comments? My greatest concern again is still signal timing and somewhat deceptive conversations around it. I would point out that DOT, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, On the yellow part of the signal timing, when we installed these red light cameras, we added 0.3 to the yellow minimum that's provided in the traffic manual. Loma Linda added a second to their timing. So our current timing is substantially shorter than what they did. If we added 0.7, we would match the minimum that they might have put in. I don't know if they actually started at the legal minimum or if they had already added timing. But there's no question we're not doing what they had done. If we brought it up to a full second above, there's no question we would have a very significant drop in the number of violations. And again, Mr. Fisher, I heard you say, again, you would look at these signals. We've directed not to have them looked at. We've directed to change the signal timing at all of the signalized intersections where there are red light cameras.
If I read the motion correctly, it said to determine the appropriate yellow times.
To the appropriate time. It didn't say just to look at it. It did say to change it.
And we will do that. But just for your information, I'm looking at the 32 locations where we added the additional time, and the additional yellow plus all red time varies.
No, just the yellow. To match Loma Linda, apples and apples, oranges and oranges. They've added a second just to their yellow timing.
Right.
So what do we have above the minimum in our yellow timing?
We've added about half a second of yellow time, and on the average about 1.2 seconds of all red time. So I don't know if Loma Linda added an all red as well, but when you look at it in the aggregate, we've added more than 1.5 seconds of additional time beyond.
Of course, the all red only impacts the safety. As far as eliminating violations, it would only be the yellow that would eliminate the violations. So to match what they've done, you would have to get up to at least a second above the minimum time.
And at all 32 locations, the additional time that we added varies between, at the low, it's 0.9 seconds, and at the high, it's 2.4 seconds.
But the two things combined?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Parks, you ready now?
Thank you
and then
very
Mr.
much,
Englander will follow.
Colleagues, one of the things I'd just like to clarify a couple of issues. Number one, when there was a discussion earlier about the first month of the contract would be $72,000. Currently, we're paying $200,000+ because of the current contract. So it's a drop from $256,000 down to whatever you negotiate, which may be lower than 72. The other issue I think is important, and I appreciate Mr. Fisher, who has to go to court and testify when we have accidents and what the engineering, there has to be based on guidelines, and that they are the width of the street, the miles per hour. Those things are important to defend the city at all of our 4,000 intersections, not creating a patch of intersections that just have their own unique criteria. And so I think that's what I hear you saying, is that it's what is appropriate, because, again, you have to defend that. Is that accurate?
That's correct, and that's why we like to use an amount that's customized for the intersection, that the yellow time reflect some speed, and that the all red time reflect the width of the intersection. On narrow intersections, you don't need as much time to clear it. On wide intersections, you do. And so we like to take a thoughtful, customized approach at each location, not just use some arbitrary flat amount.
Okay. So I think that's important for all of us to realize, because that's litigation down the road if you're making decisions arbitrarily versus a study of these intersections. All right. Thank you. Don't shake your head. Tell me yes.
I agree with you.
All right. The other one is that the issue, and I think we have to realize what confusion we might be creating. If we're getting rid of the signals on the 32 city intersections, it has no impact on what MTA is doing along their bus routes. Is that correct?
That is correct. Along the busway and along the light rail lines, those operations will continue under Metro.
Okay. And they will continue under the current rules that are established by the courts?
That is correct.
All right. So when we tell people not to pay your ticket, we need to make sure we're aware that we're only talking about the 32 intersections that the city is dealing with, if you want to give that message. because the issue that's reflected on the MTA rail and bus line are out of our jurisdiction.
That is correct, and there are also signal systems adjacent to the city, such as Sepulveda and Wilshire in the unincorporated area, but adjacent to the city, in Culver City, West Hollywood, and Beverly Hills, and Pasadena. It needs to be clear that this applies only to the 32 intersections in the city of Los Angeles.
The last question I have is that in talking earlier about other cities and not being aware of how they added the 1 second or how they documented it, if they just added the second and did not document by the technology that was in place, would we have any idea whether the 1 second was meaningful or not?
What we don't know in a lot of these discussions is when jurisdictions added time, we don't know where they were starting from. It's possible that their yellow times may have been lower than they should have been.
Yeah. Okay.
So yes, if you increase the yellow time when you had a deficient yellow time, you are going to get a safety improvement, and that's been the most difficult thing for us to try to document in this discussion.
And we don't know at this time whether their initial yellow was sufficient or not.
In many cases, we don't, and we're trying to research that.
Okay. All I would ask is, in June, as you're phasing this out, is that if we can assist the DOT as they look at these 32 intersections and determine there should be some alteration, that we work with the vendor and see if we can use the existing technology that's in place to validate whether that change is appropriate, but certainly would not like to go forward and on the tickets or whatever that's issued to move forward on them, but use the technology to validate whether that 1 second or half a second really made a difference, or do you see a significant change in what was prior cited at that location? So we'd ask that we can talk to the vendor in that regard. Thank you.
Mr. Englander.
Thank you. First, in regards to, and I don't want to bring it up for discussion, I'm not asking any questions, but I think when this comes back on the contract issue, we just will need a clarification, because the CLA report on June 22nd that went to both the Budget and Finance Committee as well as the Audits and Government Efficiency Committee states on page 7 that on June 17, 2011, the City Attorney transmitted to Council the draft ordinance regarding contracting with businesses based in or headquartered in Arizona. The consideration of the draft ordinance is still pending. So I'm not sure if that plays into this, but again, not looking for the direction on this right now. What I'm asking, colleagues, is that we go ahead and support Mr. Zine's work in the Audits Committee. He has done a tremendous job in bringing this to our attention and exposing some of the faults of the system and the court system and the state system, as well as Mr. Parks and what he did in Budget and Finance Committee. I think they both need to be applauded for their efforts, and support both of those committees' reports. And then in addition, I'd like to move that we immediately instruct the CAO and CLA to negotiate the phase-out and bring this back to Council for the phase-out portion of it, that further that the terms of that contract for the phase-out, the scope of work that shall be amended to delete any obligation to operate the cameras after August 1st. All other processing obligations will continue as we discussed, and the amount in which we'll pay for that. I also want to add that we ensure cost neutrality at a minimum, that there's no cost as part of this phase-out to the city over and above the collection rate. And we ask the vendor to remove their equipment along with the installed city equipment, if possible, based on the contracts and that we have in the MOU at no cost. And so I would like to ask my colleagues to support that.
Councilmember Zine, and then Mr. LeBlanc.
Well, I'll support that. I wanted to make a motion that on the items 42, 43, 44, that the audit was done by the controller, the police commission report, and the aspect of termination of the contract for the enforcement. Make a motion that that happened at the end of July. Mr. Englander, on your comments, I think they're in line with the Budget and Finance Committee, with the Audit Government Efficiency Committee. I think that's the will of this body, to make it clear that the contract for enforcement ends, and that the cleanup language be drafted, come back to the council for approval, the period of time, the compensation, etc. That'll be the motion that we conclude this program. And I also want to emphasize, it's been brought up by Councilmember Parks, is that any time it was spoken of, it was the 32 locations in the city of Los Angeles. And I don't know who has those locations, but maybe DOT can give those to our offices so we can inform the public that may be asking the specific locations where these are currently installed. And that would be my motion on this particular matter, the 3 items. Thank you, Mr. President.
Second that. Thank you, Mr. Labange.
Just that there'll be a collaborative, this is friendly to the motion, a collaborative effort of the Department of Transportation, the Police Department, on any mechanism, if there's any benefit to Los Angeles to have the equipment still there for whatever reason. You have cameras at, how many intersections in the city? Not red light cameras, but how many cameras in the city do you have at? Hundreds that go to City Hall East?
We have 400 ATSAC cameras.
Right, 400 ATSAC cameras.
Plus 63 red light photo enforcement cameras.
Got it. All right, so that be said. Also, Pauline Chad, you do a great job and have always been for the community. Thank you in your new role. John, and this is very important, Mr. Koretz, because I just thought of it when I mentioned Bernard West Hollywood. If a city, in the city of Los Angeles, we may have an intersection, there's 4 quarters in an intersection, 3 of them may be in another city, or you make a friendly agreement with that other city who operates the light. Santa Monica Boulevard, which is Old State Route 66, Old California 2, is in West Hollywood, but a portion's in Los Angeles, a corner, I think the southeast corner. It's a West Hollywood intersection, correct?
We have a lot of border intersections throughout the city, and we reach agreement with the neighboring jurisdiction as to who's going to operate that signal.
Right.
In many cases, it's the city of LA. In some cases, it's the neighboring jurisdiction.
Right, but that particular one, because West Hollywood does have cameras all over, they will probably keep that, I would imagine. So we have to inform people that the railroad crossings, the bus crossings for the Orange Line, the light rail, Expo, Gold Line, Blue Line will still be in effect. And just ask the question, and this is a tough question, but has any of you talked to anybody with the Sheriff's Department or the MTA on the red light issue? Because it would seem a little obvious to me that since we're the city of Los Angeles and they have a large, long Orange Line that has lights in it, and what problem they may have, or has there been something going on here?
We haven't discussed it with them with regard to the termination of this red light phone enforcement contract, but we have discussed with them the value of red light photo enforcement at these crossings where the risk is very high or severe.
For a train or a bus, etc. like that. All right, so I made my points. Thank you, and we'll continue to work forward.
Mr. Koretz.
Yes, I just wanted to add a minor friendly amendment that we do the negotiations for these costs pending an official opinion from the city attorney that we're actually responsible for these costs. Because if it turns out that we're not, as Mr. Krikorian and I believe, both read this contract, ideally we shouldn't be paying for it. So if we can confirm that that's our responsibility as we negotiate the costs, that would be a good thing, I think. Good.
Thank you. That is our last speaker, believe it or not. As such, Mr. Clerk, if we can walk through the motions that have been made in reverse order. I think Mr. Zine's motion was the last one. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Could we restate the content of that for the record, Mr. Zine?
The matter on 42 and 43, that we would accept and receive and file the controller's audit and the communications from the Los Angeles Police Commission, and that the Budget and Finance Committee report, and there is a subsequent report from Audits of Government Efficiency, that the enforcement program will terminate midnight July 31st, and that the CLA will review with the current vendor the cleanup procedure. And in addition to that, for Mr. Kokori and Mr. Koretz, the city attorney would then decide if there's any appropriate expenditure or none regarding the cleanup language for the outstanding matters on the photo red light enforcement program. I think that should cover what Mr. Koretz had brought forward, and that we would, again, conclude the program midnight, July 31st, and as far as what happens after that with the pending citation, et cetera, that language will be worked out with the CLA and the vendor, and if there's any cost that the company would incur versus the city, that would also be reviewed by the city attorney's office as requested by Mr. Kokori and Mr. Koretz.
Okay.
That was the motion.
Everybody clear on that?
What part do you want me to go over?
I want the city clerk to tell us what we're voting.
I'd hate to paraphrase what the maker of the motion has said, so I would certainly defer to the maker of the motion.
Mr.
Thank
Zine?
you, Mr. Alcon. Thank you, Mr. Alcon. Is there any clarification
Folks,
you need?
why don't you clarify if anybody, before we vote, anything else? So you have the receive and file the audit, the budget and finance report, and the AGE report to terminate the program July 31st, but the CLA will review cleanup procedures. Is that the extent?
That's it.
Okay.
And then the add-on, Mr. Koretz, Mr. Kokorin, regarding the city attorney's review to decide if the city should pay for additional cost or if that should be by the vendor.
So if I may, Mr. President, just as a point of information, the motion does not then imply that an amendment to the contract is necessary. The motion includes an instruction to the city attorney to negotiate and advise the council as to whether or not any amendment or supplemental contract or no action at all, correct, other than a demand letter to the contractor, is necessary. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
That's it in legalese language, Mr. Kokori.
Mr. Labange?
I want to ask, since we're this year, the most important improvement on intersections that I've also seen is the countdown pedestrian heads, where you have 14, 13, 12, all the way down. Would you look at that too as a addition? You're talking about 1 second. See how much that has made a difference in flow and safety professionally. Would you make that note, Mr. Fisher?
We will indeed look at that now that 100% of the intersections in the city have the countdown feature.
Because that has been an improvement since this whole period of time. That's been a new, we've phased out walk, don't walk. Right?
That plus SAT-SAC plus speed feedback signs plus enforceable speed limits plus many other tools.
That's totally separate from the motion.
I understand, but it's still the intersection and safety, and I know you're an expert, retired.
If there's no objection, we'll get that report back.
Thank you.
Separately, okay. So on Mr. Zine's motion, is there any objection to it? If there's no objection, then that will amend what we have before, or I guess let's go ahead and just take a vote on it. Let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay. That is approved. Are there any other outstanding motions relate to other items? Those are three? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. We will recess the special meeting. Sorry, we will adjourn the special meeting and go back to the regular meeting to items called special. First item, please.
That brings us to item 34, called Special for Cards.
Item 34 is before us, and Mr. Arnold Sachs, if you'd like to come forward on item 34. Feel free to stay there and give us your comments on 35 and 37 as well. We'll take those all up together.
Mr. Labange, did you want to say something? I think you wanted to say something. Councilman, did you want to
Mr. Sachs, would you like to speak on item number 37 right now? Or 34, 35, and 37?
No, I thought Councilman Labange had.
Thank you.
Item 34, I just wanted to point out that this bond series that's up for bid, up for sale with $259,666,000. That's relatively close to the amount of money that was being transferred by the DWP, except the DWP is only transferring about $125 million. And I'm wondering if they were forced to transfer the total about $58 million that they said they would transfer to the city for this fiscal year, how much of an impact that would have on the general fund. If the city did receive that $125 million extra or $128 million extra, would the city then have to buy or sell $259 million worth of bonds? Would it still be necessary? And would it in fact have an effect on the general fund? Item 35 refers to the costs incurred by the city associated with the freeway closure, the 105 A and B. Again, the MTA is authorizing a non-budgeted study for the 405 region. The city should request a budget on this study. The MTA has numerous studies. No public agency has more studies that are limited in the amount of money they can spend. There is no budget on these studies. The Red Line, the Subway to the Sea, the Downtown Connector, every fiasco that the MTA has started has come along with an unbudgeted study that just is like a black hole for funds. And in addition, when the study is done, the city should request and require that because the engineers or the company that involved in the demolition was able to put in a third piece of equipment to speed the demolition along, thereby in having an opportunity to, I don't know, can I...
Try to, please continue. Go ahead. We can hear you well, but I'll make sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Folks, can move your conversations, please, and if the sergeants at arms can help us with that.
That the city should be able to implore that the new contractor, or unless it's the same general contract, have at least the same amount of equipment that they used on the southbound demolition or the southern portion of the demolition on the bridge that they will use on the northern portion of the demolition on the bridge, and that the incentive payments are raised to a different level, not including the same amount of incentive payment, because we already know, or we found out from this project, that the added equipment was allowed them to cut the demolition time by 24 hours. It's like paying for nothing. Oh, well, that's what we do here at the city. And item 37, sir, is that the last item? I'm just concerned. I just listened to the city council discuss this red light camera program, and three issues there were outstanding. A, Councilman Labange brought up the MTA having a red light camera program.
Sir, we're not on the red light camera anymore.
I understand.
So please, and it's not general public comment either, so if you can please keep it to the three items.
The point is that the city council is going to debate on one position here for a layoff, for a retirement. I'm just wondering, the police department has a series of retirements every month. The fire department maybe also has retirements every month. Other departments have retirements every month. Why is the city council debating the retirement of one person, although the position is responsible for the department's mobile staging? Doesn't the department have an alternative plan in case there's an emergency? What if this person had been injured? What if this person had failed to show up? What is a contingency plan about one person? And if this is the situation, are there contingency plans? I don't know. There was a story I remember about somebody from the DOT retiring, and they took sets of keys with them. And there was nobody here who had keys for this person to replace the sets of keys. So what are their contingency plans for these situations? You're going to spend 30 seconds talking about this item, which is 31 seconds too long. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll keep these items before us on item 35. And Van Nuys, Miriam Fogler would like to speak on item 35.
I just put in for 37 before you called me.
We have, would you like to speak on the Carmageddon costs? Nope.
Yep, and 37.
Okay, we have 35 right now before us. Go ahead, please.
Okay, I get 2 minutes for each of these, or just...
Yes, ma'am. We don't have a card for 37, but go ahead and speak on both of them.
Thank you very much. They're nice. I wish that you could move up to mayor. I want to let you know that that I had some problems because of the public problem, the PR. There was no access of having to get to your different destinations for concerts, and it was told that you can take the freeways. You know, Councilman Rosendahl told me you could take the freeways, but it'll be longer. It was better than taking the streets. But nobody told us how you can streamline, you know, the trip like to Glendale or going to the Greek Theater. You know, there was no public advertisement, nothing in the papers or on the radio or anything to tell people that it's okay, you can get to your destinations okay. You know, you didn't have to have all those restrictions because of the Carmageddon. And I'm really disappointed because you know the people depend upon commuting around here, whether it's public transit, private, because everything's all over the place, and it's not like you live next door to something, you know, and you can just walk there. So this is really bad PR. That no way of getting to your places, and that should have been addressed. Now on to number 37. Can I get to 37 yet? Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you can continue. We'll make sure the clock gets reset. There you go.
Okay.
So if you want to turn to item
Number 37, regarding this retirement. Speaking of retirement, is the fact is that the city attorneys didn't get that right to have their 4% retirement because you wanted to take away their arbitration rights for furloughs. So now these people, you know, how are they going to retire if they don't have that 4%? And you said there a few months ago, that those families that don't vote in the 4% retirement, you can't blame them because you're making it hard for people to get that 4% retirement health care, okay, to get voted in, because you're putting obstacles with other things. You're joining it with like pay raises and different other things that you can throw in, like excess sick time, like now arbitration rights. You're making it difficult for those people. It's not right. You should need to have it all by itself. And I was able to get it with our MOU, okay, our unit, and you consented to that. Now, why couldn't you do that for the city attorneys? I don't know why you didn't, because they should be getting that right. It's in the name of humanity, in the name of human dignity. Let these people vote it in, the retirement health care, so that they can have that 100% medical, and then that the city is getting those contributions. I mean, you're just really hurting human beings. They're working for you, and it's just basic human dignity. This is so inhumane what you're doing to these people, and it should be given them this opportunity to have that right to pay their 4% contribution. I mean, I agree with Councilman Rosendahl, and I'd like to see this happen. And if you're talking about this one gentleman, it should be all of us in the city that work here, you know. Not me, but my husband. He should have that basic right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fogler. Have a nice day. Thank you for your comments. Mr. Englander, I think you want to discuss one of these. Why don't we take the vote on the other two? You wanted to keep 35, I believe. Okay, so let's take a vote on 34 and 37. Oh, Mr. Labange, did you call 37 special too? Okay, let's just take a vote on 34. Hold on one second. We got two items. I just wanted to see which ones to vote on. So 34, if nobody's calling special, let's go ahead and open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay. We have 35, and then we have 37 before us. So one more second, Mr. Labange. We'll speed there. Number 35 is next before us. Mr. Englander.
Thank you. First of all, I want to compliment all the departments, particularly LAPD and DOT, that did a tremendous job during this process. And but wanted to ensure that we're protecting our interests financially as well in this. And that I understand that we do have agreements for reimbursements, and wanted to see and get some information from the CAO. Do we have a CAO present to answer some of the questions? Ed, thank you. And wanted to find out, first, to get a clear picture of what the total costs were, and the costs include, including all the various departments from engineering and DOT, LAPD, LA Fire Department, fire deployed in advance, resources moved around, paramedics resources as well, in high fire severity zones and hillsides, that they would be placed at certain locations. Wanted to find out if not only we got the cost reimbursed, how much we got reimbursed, were the planning phases of this also calculated, and how we go about capturing all that information to ensure we got reimbursed, and as well that the money is not going into the general fund but back to those departments. So because I don't believe we put that in the current year's budget as an allocation from the departments. So if you could.
Ed Rose from the CAO's office. Response to all of your questions, we are still at this point collecting all of our payroll data. It's not complete. We don't have an accurate, up-to-date estimate of what the total costs were, but we're putting the word out to gather all of our costs, including the collateral costs of that go beyond the direct salaries and overtime and things of that nature. Once we get that, we will be taking the lead in putting all those numbers together. We'll be vetting them to make sure they're accurate and eligible for submission to the MTA. We will work with DOT at that point to interface with the MTA to submit those invoices and get reimbursement. We anticipate 100% of our costs will be covered, and we should be getting reimbursement within 30 to 60 or 30 to 90 days within submission to the MTA.
Okay, and all the money that will be going back to those departments as well?
Yes, and once we do get reimbursed from the MTA, we will be reimbursing the departments through our financial status process, which we have our financial status reports on a somewhat regular basis, September, November, during those periods. And that's when we typically move money into departments.
Great. And then the only other question that I'd asked, I wasn't sure, I didn't hear it, and you probably answered, I just didn't hear it. The planning phases of this, are those cost recoverable?
Yes.
Well? Yeah.
Yes,
okay,
they
so
are.
we'll be billing for that. Okay. Nothing further. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Labange.
I just want to thank everybody on the MTA board years ago on these projects. They did put in for reimbursement. They did do it. I want to thank all the departments. I especially want to thank the traffic officers from LADOT and all the engineers that worked. It was a collaboration of people. LAPD out there on motors, LA Fire on motors, extra engines on motors. It worked. As I said before, it wasn't a tea party, but a team party, a team effort of community, public, private partnership with the contractor. And I think Mr. Mulholland would be smiling that his bridge was halfway removed, knowing that it was done the way it was. But it's a good move, and I just wanted to publicly thank everybody for their great work there. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, go ahead and take a vote. Open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
That is approved. Thank you. Mr. Labange, item number 37.
Members, this is a good motion. I ask for your vote. The Department of Recreation and Parks really needs it. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else wishing to be heard? Go ahead and prepare the roll and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
All right. That's approved. Thank you. We'll send that forthwith without objection. Mr. Wesson.
Yes, Mr. President. I'd like to ask that item 27 be reconsidered for purposes of an amendment.
Okay, let's go ahead and do that then. Let's open the roll on reconsideration on item 27. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
Okay, that's back before us. Do you have that? Is it being circulated or? It's been circulated. It's been circulated, okay. So 27A, folks will look at that. If there's no objection, we'll incorporate that in. Go ahead, please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
That is approved. Next item, please.
Mr. President, that brings us to item 45, called Special for Councilmember Perry.
Okay, Ms. Perry, item 45.
We now have the letter of non-opposition from LAPD, and the recommendation is that LAPD will not oppose the issuance of this, but acting in the interest of the public, the department has recommended that the applicant follow all conditions as set forth by ABC, and that said operating conditions be imposed, and that would diminish vice-related problems and that may develop at the proposed site. So with that, we can support with this LAPD letter included as part of the official record. And this is the letter of non-opposition dated July 26, 2011.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead then with that motion. If we can open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
All right.
Mr. President, for clarification, that was to grant the
motion to
PCN.
grant. Thank you.
That brings us to item 39, scheduled for closed session.
All right, item 39 is a closed session item. In accordance with California state law, we will go into closed session to discuss legal matters with our city attorney. We'll come back in open session for any vote we need to take. If we can clear the chambers, please.
California's agriculture and environment are under attack by something which may appear harmless, but its damage is very real. The damage by invasive pests. Learn about stopping their attack at hungrypests.com, because they're here and they're hungry.
I'll be home in a minute.
Well, the party's just getting started, so hurry home, honey.
Talk to you later.
Yes, good job.
Slow down. Your family is waiting for you. Watch the road.
Hay escasez de agua en Los Ángeles. Cada gota es preciosa. Todos podemos hacer nuestra parte. Use una escoba en vez de manguera. Lave autos con válvula de cierre automático. Repare fugas. Use rociadores los días que le corresponden a su domicilio. Domicilios impares los lunes, miércoles y viernes. Domicilios pares los martes, jueves y domingos. Antes de las 9 de la mañana o después de las 4 de la tarde. El futuro está en nuestras manos. Y eso es algo bueno.
Come on, man. What's up, Bato? Where you from? Hey, what's up, Johnny? What's up? Man, don't look good, though. Come on. Hey, I'm your friend, right? I'm your friend, right? Come on. Hey, come on, man. Forget it. I'm going to school.
You have a choice to make. Make sure it's the right one.
I'm glad these kids made the right choice.
investigating a series of bizarre and disturbing attacks that have left children in cities from coast to coast injured and fearing for their safety. As Global's Annika Bauer tells us, the young victims were targeted simply because of the color of their hair.
They better, and while we begin with an Eyewitness News exclusive disturbing video of a gay man being beaten in Queens.
The individual was attacked simply for his orientation, and we're just not going to tolerate it.
The word hate is just unexcusable. It's a word that shouldn't be used, and to hate somebody for the color of their skin is just not right.
It creates fear among all of the community members.
I think it's wrong how people discriminate against others just because of the way they prefer people, as in gays or just their skin color. It's wrong, and something needs to be done. A hate crime is any criminal act directed against a person based on the victim's actual or perceived nationality, religion, sexual orientation, disability, gender, and especially race. Examples of hate crimes include acts which result in injury even if the injury is slight, threats of violence that look like they can be carried out, acts which result in property damage, any criminal act or attempted criminal act, including property damage directed against public or private agencies.
The suspect can spend up to 1 year in jail, and if it's a felony, it could either be between 2 and 4 years for a prison sentence.
If you believe a hate crime has occurred or will occur, you are very much encouraged to contact the Los Angeles Police Department or the We Tip hotline. Public cooperation is often essential in solving hate crimes. We Tip hotline, 909-987-5005.
have been excused. We're just going through. We're back in open session. If we can please take up the item in closed session that we voted upon.
Mr. President, item 39, there is a recommendation for settlement in the case entitled Spencer Gogue versus City of Los Angeles in the amount of $450,000.
All righty, that is before us. Colleagues, if we can please take our vote on that now. Open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
That is approved. That was 11-0 vote. It was a 12-0 vote in closed session with Mr. Reyes here as well. Next order of business, please.
Mr. President, Council has motions for posting and referral.
Those are posted and referred.
There is an excuse on the desk. Councilmember Parks requests to be excused on July 29 due to city business. A motion is required.
What does that take us down to? Is that
brief moment for a funeral.
Okay.
I'll be here for the bulk of the meeting.
All right, I'll go ahead and move that. Ms. Perry seconds. We'll grant that excuse. We'll just make sure everybody else can hold tight for that. Any other excuses?
No, sir. The desk is clear.
Any announcements, colleagues? Mr. Parks.
President, just want to remind the public that tonight, Wednesday, July 27th, the ongoing community meetings with MTA about the Crenshaw line will occur at 1137 East Redondo Boulevard in Inglewood from 5:30 to 7:30. And then also advise the public that a major community event at the Barbara Morrison Performing Arts Center that will be on Thursday from 6 a.m. to at 6 p.m. That will handle their Living Legends program on Thursday, July 28th, and that's in Lamert Park.
Thank you. Other announcements, colleagues? Not do we have any adjourning motions today? If I can ask everybody to please rise in chambers for our adjourning motions. Council members, if I can ask you to please rise. And recognize Mr. LaBonge.
Members, I ask you to adjourn in memory of Elliot Handler, who is the co-founder of Mattel, creator of Hot Wheels and many things. He passed away at the age of 95. He died at his home in Century City. And his daughter, Barbara Siegel, was whom Barbie doll was named after. Mr. Handler also had a co-partnership with Harold Matson, where they developed the name Mattel. He's survived by his daughter Barbara, and also a brother, 5 grandchildren, and 6 great-grandchildren. Also, I ask we adjourn in memory of Tavan Taluker, who is a John Marshall High School student who tragically lost his life in a battle with cancer. He was an honor student at John Marshall High. Also, I'd like to ask that we adjourn on behalf of Ms. Hahn in memory of Rosalie Ann Linkar, a ballet dancer who died on July 12th at the age of 88, a longtime San Pedro resident, and she owned and operated a ballet school in San Pedro with her husband. Born in Missouri to a large family, she came west to be part of Hollywood, and in Hollywood where she attended Hollywood Professional School. She is survived by her husband of 70 years and her 3 sons, Tom, Matt, and Mark, several nieces and nephews. This is on behalf of the 15th District. And also, just to add, as we adjourned on Tuesday for Eric Shepard, the Los Angeles City firefighter who died off duty, but an active firefighter, for the record, was born in Los Angeles at Cedars-Sinai in 1978. He graduated from Long Beach Jordan High School. He joined the Air Force after high school and served in the Air Force as a firefighter in Kuwait. His home base was Edwards Air Force Base, and after 4 years of dedicated service to our country, he was discharged as a senior airman. In July of 2003, Eric joined the Los Angeles City Fire Department, and following his probationary assignments, he transferred to Station 29 in the Wilshire District in Battalion 11. Widely recognized as a conscientious and talented firefighter, as well as a very special person, Eric quickly earned the respect and admiration of his peers and superiors. He successfully tested for the rank of engineer and was looking forward to that promotion. Eric passed away on the 18th of July 2011, survived by his father Ronald and his stepmother Cindy, his mother Loretta, his sister Renee, and the love of his life, Cynthia Smath, for whom he brought into this world, his daughter, Sarah. To his credit, he was a great credit to his family and his country and the fire service, and he will be sorely missed. His services will be held Friday at 10 a.m. at Crenshaw Christian Center, 7901 Vermont Avenue in South Los Angeles. We ask again, for the record, adjourn to the memory of Eric Shepard.
Thank you very much, Mr. Labange. Are there other adjourning motions today? If not, Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll? And we'll next be in session this Friday. In 2 days, that will be July 29th. Have a great day. This meeting of the Los Angeles City Council is hereby adjourned.